This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
In August of last year, the National Bank of Canada released a special report about the deterioration of the youth job market. It says it's a bad omen for everyone. The report came on the heels of an increase in the youth unemployment rate, up to 7.4% for workers from all educational backgrounds. The private sector has weak job growth, and despite looking for months, thousands of young people have all but given up on their search for a salaried job. Forget about health benefits when you can't afford to pay rent. Any job that bites will do. StatCan says many highly educated young people are working for low wages in fields that have nothing to do with their degrees. In their first quarter report for 2025, the Bank of Canada said that hiring intentions are weak. Businesses are delaying making important decisions, like hiring, until they have a clearer outlook on the current economic environment. Some companies are even participating in the posting of ghost jobs. According to WorkLink BC, ghost jobs are positions that look open, but employers have no intention of hiring for the role at that time. It might be to survey analytics of hiring sites or to gauge demand for a similar position. Regardless, hundreds of young people flock to the postings and apply in earnest, only to hear nothing back. Khadija Munir is all too familiar with the current job market. With a master's degree and 8 years of experience in architecture and city planning, she is still out of a job after nearly 10 months of searching. I asked her about her frustrations with the current state of the job market.
So February this year, that's when I started looking. So almost like 10 months now.
Wow. And what were you doing before? Like what position did you hold before?
So before moving to Canada, I was a program manager for an affordable housing program that was being run by the World Bank in Pakistan. So I was at a very senior level with a lot of good international expertise under my belt. I moved here. I took a small career break, did some remote consulting gigs side by side. And then I started looking in February this year. And, just to elaborate that on a little bit more, I did get my first interview call immediately, like in March maybe. But none of them materialized to an offer. I've been told that usually, the competition is a lot, and you are in a lot of positions I've been told that I'm competing with people who have like 20 years of Canadian local planning experience. So it's not something that I could, it's hard for me to sort of stand out in those roles. Most of my my targeted jobs are with the municipalities, the city governments, the regional governments, and I've been told that they're competitive, and rightfully so. But I also feel like their selection criteria and the way things are done and shortlisted, it's not super transparent. It doesn't feel very inclusive for newcomers and people with international experience. So there are a lot of jobs that I've been told, okay, try at the entry level. My mentors have told me that, but I've been told that I'm overqualified for those and slightly underqualified, or not having Canadian local planning experience for the for the positions which are like right at my level. So it's just I feel like it's just a tough position to be in. Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, it sounds incredibly frustrating trying to find
Yeah.
a position when you know you have the right education, you know you have the right experience, but you're just not quite getting any bites.
Yeah.
Would you tell me about, how the interviewing process has looked for you? Because, we're seeing a lot of these entry-level positions, these jobs that aren't necessarily paying, very well, but you're doing, 3, 4, 5 interviews for. Have you experienced anything like that?
I so for in my so in my job occupation and the industry that I'm working with, I've usually had a max of 3 interviews. So the rounds are not frustrating. What's frustrating is the flexibility of the employers while conducting those rounds. Like oftentimes I have had the same interview, two different municipalities schedule an interview on the same date, and when I requested one to reschedule, they just canceled the interview process. Like they told me that we will, okay, we'll just get back to you with another day, and then they just canceled it. So I'm just baffled, because you expect better upholding of professional ethics and principles, especially from public sector organizations. So I'm super surprised, because even where I come from, and I've lived in the States, I've worked in the States, I have a lot of international experience. Nobody does that. And for Canadian municipalities to be doing that, it's baffling. And what's even more frustrating and demotivating is the fact that you've done one or two rounds with somebody, and if they are not moving you up to an offer, they don't even send a rejection letter. It's all crickets after the first round or the second round. So, I mean, some municipalities have been great about it, and they do get back. So the bar is set so low in these times, is that if they reach out, if you it's not even them reaching out to you, you reach out to them after like a week or so after the interview and ask for an update, and you get one. And I feel like that's the lowest bar that's set right now. I feel like it's very, like, it's hard for everybody personally, to, because there's a lot of effort that candidates put through, show up for the interview. They might be taking time off the work that they're doing, and then not to hear back whether you made it or not. Of course, you didn't made it, otherwise you would have heard back. But send an automated rejection letter. How hard is that? You have all of these ATSs doing the work for you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think demoralizing is, a really great word to use there. That's the general sentiment of what I've been seeing is, a lot of people are feeling really demoralized. A lot of new
Yeah.
grads, a lot of people who have been, laid off from their first jobs and are
Yep.
just trying to get their foot in the door any way that they can.
Yeah.
How do you want to see things change kind of generally in the job market to help young people find jobs?
I think the first and the foremost thing is having ethical recruiting practices. I feel like Canada overall, and I'm saying it because I come with a lot of international experience, is that Canada, in my experience, at least the West Coast, like people, like 90% of the, even the public sector organizations, they lack ethical recruiting practices. It's not transparent a lot of times. It's just a lot of um, ghost positions. They're not even going to recruit anybody external for them. It's a lot of internal recruitment, which is fine. Maybe there are laws which support that. There's a union and everything, and completely understandable. But there needs to be more transparency even for the youth, because I can imagine that there are people who have come to Canada, or are here and invested in a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, and they're fresh out of school and they're looking for something, and it's just hard for them to they're competing against people who are have been in the industry for years. So it's not transparent on what they can do to upskill or upsell themselves. And I think better recruiting practices, like, we're not asking HR and recruiters to become career coaches or mentors, but having transparent and better recruiting practices as a first step can at least make people well informed about the position that they're in. And maybe, like, somebody's just mass applying to a lot of, like, let's say it's one type of organizations, like, let's say small private construction companies, and if you at least reject them after a month or two, or just send an automated rejection email, they'll know, okay, so this is maybe not my cup of tea, let's look somewhere else, or anything of that sort. So I think no feedback is probably a big dilemma for people trying to enter into the job market today, because they're at their wits end as to what to do and how to do it. And like, there are more questions than answers for them.
Mm-hmm. The silence aspect of it all, not hearing back after, going through all that effort of applying and interviewing,
Yeah.
is incredibly frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
on a more personal level, how has this impacted you personally? I'm seeing a lot of folks talk about, they're feeling, undervalued, or they're, this has taken a big hit to their self-esteem. Has this impacted you personally in any way?
For sure. Like I am just, I actually like this is I realized very recently because I was going through my this is my second time in a foreign country. Like I've studied and lived in the States before. That was my first time, and then this is my second time moving to another country and starting from scratch. And just like yesterday, I was checking my emails for something 6 years ago when I first took that journey in States, and I was like, I used to write so much more confidently and so much more assertively, and I was a go-getter and all of that. And I think before I started this job journey, I was like that as well. But like 8 months down with so many crickets and bad recruiting practices and just generally like not having any feedback and not being transparent, and you're just sort of like you don't know what you're up against. I feel like it has really taken a hit to my confidence, and I'm sure that might show up in some of my interviews as well, because it's really hard to feel something else, but it takes a lot to sort of overcome that and then show up with a completely different energy for interviews, and that's something I still try to do. But I think my confidence in myself overall and my capabilities has really taken a hit with the kind of job search experience that I have had.
For BCIT's The Crow, I'm Riley Cunningham. Thanks for listening to For the Record.
According to Statistics Canada, over 22 million people in Canada have autoimmune diseases. This is a disease that increasingly affects people most likely due to environmental factors, food additives, stress, amongst other reasons. The female population is affected higher at 13.6% and men at 7.4%. Around 10% of the population in Canada lives with an autoimmune disease. This is an umbrella term for multiple diseases that cause the immune system to attack healthy organs in the body. Often, there isn't enough awareness for this, and patients experiencing symptoms might be turned away by doctors under assumptions that the patient is merely experiencing chronic fatigue. However, if left untreated, autoimmune diseases can have major impacts on health and can lead to much more serious problems that require hospitalization and constant care. Now, speaking with Caitlin Mello, a multiple diagnosed autoimmune disease survivor, she uncovers firsthand the struggles of living with her illnesses and her experiences with how difficult it may be for doctors to recognize autoimmune diseases when approached by a patient for the first time.
Name is Caitlin Marie Mello.
Okay, and can you tell me your connection with autoimmune disease again?
Yeah, no worries. So a few years ago, about 3-4 years ago, I was diagnosed celiac via a scope and everything and the blood test. And then after that, I was diagnosed with Still's disease. And then shortly after that, I was diagnosed with macrophage activation syndrome. And then as well, I now know I have Raynaud's phenomenon, like another kind of condition called Raynaud's phenomenon, and also I suffer from oh my gosh, what was the last one? It's Raynaud's and Still's macrophage.
What was the biggest, sacrifice or struggles you've had to experience due to having an autoimmune disease, either in your personal life, obviously health-wise, or financial life or like any other sector?
I was diagnosed while I was actually doing my master's in Scotland, in Glasgow. So that was like a huge, huge adjustment for myself because it was just like it was just like I had to kind of really pivot. Like I've always lived a very active lifestyle and everything like that. So having and like I'm also very, very social. I used to go out with my friends all the time and everything like that, and like there was like trips that I had to cancel because of that. So it was like a big kind of adjustment in that way. Like there was times where I like physically wasn't able to even go to the bathroom by myself. And so my mom literally actually had to fly out to Glasgow to help support me. And so it's not really something you anticipate when you do an abroad program, that your mom's going to literally have to come and stay with you in your dorm room.
Oh, yeah.
So all of that was a big, big kind of adjustment and like not at all anticipated. And like in a lot of ways, it was like I definitely sacrificed a few years of my 20s, which are supposed to be some of the most fun times of your life, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. And like, so when you like the first time you got diagnosed with your first autoimmune disease, what was the experience like? Like, what was the process like, and did you have any problems you encountered?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So I first started being sick before I went off to school. So that was like 2021, like of around, I want to say about June. And I was just feeling a lot of really bad symptoms. Like I had like extreme, extreme night sweats, and like I felt physically ill for about a week. And I did blood work, and the blood work was like definitely off, and it wasn't great, but like I saw my family doctor. I was referred to internal medicine, and no one was really able to diagnose me. And after a few weeks, I kind of generally got better. I did have like elevated raised lymph nodes on my neck, and so eventually they were scared that of course it was some sort of like lymphoma or something like that. So then I did have one removed and analyzed, and it was clear of cancer. So because I was generally feeling well, they were like, well, as long as everything's good, just like if you feel okay, like you can go to Glasgow and you can start your master's. Because I had already deferred it a year because of COVID. And I was like, oh, like I don't want to go to an abroad program during a pandemic, blah, blah, blah. So like I'd already taken 1 year off. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to take a second year off. So then I went to Glasgow in September, and initially I was fine. The first few weeks I was fine, and then everything just like drastically changed for me, like very, very soon. I started experiencing fevers, night sweats, the craziest rash. I was like very, very sore throat. Everything was extremely sick. And like I have dealt with, again, because I'm immunocompromised, I have like autoimmune diseases. I often do experience sickness. Like every year, like I'll have like 1 or 2 bad kind of colds or flus or strep throat or something. But this was like, I could tell it was really different. And so I was actually a Canadian in the like UK health system. So I was trying to figure out everything to happen, like how everything works with NHS. And that was like already a huge kind of learning curve, and like a shock to just basically because you don't understand the usual protocols. And my clinic that I was a part of was a student clinic, and so to try and get like an appointment it took me like 2 weeks, because it was a student clinic at a university during like a cold and flu season, and like COVID and like mono was so like it was just really hard, and you had to try and call in every morning and like just to get an appointment for that day. Like you couldn't book online or anything. Eventually it just got to the point where like I finally connected with someone, because it would always take like an hour every morning just to get through, and then they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, there's no appointment. I finally connected with someone, and they like were like, yeah, no, there's no appointments. And I just like broke down. I started crying. I was like, I need to see a doctor. Like I'm not well. Like this is not okay. And they're like, okay, fine, just come in. I saw the doctor, and like they do blood work on the spot, like the doctors themselves, which was very useful.
Okay.
She did the blood work, and she called me immediately the next day and said like your bloods are like off the chart for inflammation. Like all your inflammatory markers, like your ferritin, CRP, all of those are extremely elevated. She's like, you need to see a rheumatologist like as soon as possible. She's like, I will put you in for a stat order through NHS. she said, if you have funds and access, I don't know if you should wait till then because you will probably end up in an emergency before then. I don't know. Like, again, everything's overrun. Everything's busy. Like, you will have a stat order, so hopefully you take priority, but it may be months. We don't know. So then at this point, I connected to my parents, and I basically asked them to help me pay for a private doctor because in the UK, you have access to, like, private clinics, the diagnosis clinics. And then the tragic part was, like, all of this happened on the Wednesday, and the private clinic I was, like, told about had a rheumatologist in every other Tuesday. So he actually, it was the Tuesday, like, it was the day before he was there, so I had to wait another week and a half to see him. And then at this point, like, my symptoms were just, like, I was basically, like, non-functional. Like, I'm honestly shocked I didn't go to the hospital. I probably should have.
Wow.
But I was, like, throwing up all the time. The rash was everywhere. My fever, I had at least a couple fevers every day. It was just, like, awful. I could barely walk, like, every morning, like, because it's rheumatic, like, it's, like, inflammatory. My joints, like, I could barely close my hands. Like, it was really, really difficult in that, and just the pain was unbearable. And then I saw the private clinic, and I saw the rheumatologist, and right away he looked at everything. He like, it was like, again, you get what you pay for, so it was a very thorough top to bottom. I did, like, an entire blood workup, everything, and he's like, I will talk to other doctors, but he's like, based on everything, it seems to me that you have Still's disease. This is a 1 in a million disease. Not many people have it. This is kind of what you got. And he's like, honestly, this clinic will not be able to support you. You need constant care 24/7. He's like, luckily for you, so that was on the other side of town. My university was close to a university hospital. He's like, I have a colleague there that I will connect with, and he will take you. So immediately I was connected with that rheumatologist at Glasgow Royal Infirmary. And I saw him pretty much like once or twice a week immediately, and right away he also confirmed. He's like, yep, this looks like Still's. We did blood work. He's like, we got to put you on pretty much all the medications possible.
Yeah.
I was going to go back to Canada because we had a connection, like someone was already in like the Toronto General rheumatology clinic, and he's like, oh, he's really, really good, because I wanted to go back for Christmas, and I also just didn't know if I'd be able to finish school.
Yeah.
And so eventually, like, I got put on a huge dose of prednisone. My rheumatologist in Scotland wasn't super happy, but he's like, okay, just like go on a plane, which looking back was probably the dumbest idea of all, like going into a plane. But anyways, I came to Toronto, and I saw a doctor who was extremely, extremely experienced, who was about to actually be retired. And he looked at me, and like I was basically put in because of like the stat order and the like request that was made by the Scottish government, or the Scottish hospital, sorry. And then he looked at me, he looked at the blood work, he looked at everything. He's like, I don't think you just have Still's. And then he kind of like tapped my stomach, and he's like, it sounds like your organs are inflamed and swollen. He's like, I think you have macrophage activation syndrome. He's like, go get like what do you call it? Ultrasound. And then we'll confirm. But he's like, immediately you need to be on a biologic, and you also need to increase your steroids even more. Otherwise you will end up spending Christmas in the hospital, and like this, like basically all your organs are inflamed and like will shut down.
Wow.
And so yeah, and so that was basically the main kind of diagnosis story. And then I was put on the biologic, I was put on the high dose steroid, and then eventually everything was stable enough. I ended up taking a few extra weeks in Canada. I was actually given the green light to go back. And I was stable for a while, but then in the springtime, like towards the end of actually the start of the last semester, so about like May, June, I experienced another flare, and then I ended up having to spend 17 days in the Glasgow hospital.
Wow. I mean, so like based off of, all that you're saying about, I'm surprised to hear that you had doctors who actually looked at you and said that they were able to diagnose you from some of your symptoms like right away. But, like my next question was like, did you meet any type of doctors that helped you like specifically more? And what was the main like catalyst that helped you in recovering to where you are?
Oh, absolutely. I was blessed. Sorry, it just makes me sad. I was blessed with a lot of doctors that really, like, I would not be alive without them. And I was very fortunate throughout all of my journey that, like, everyone was very well aware of how critical my situation was. And they did absolutely everything they could. And they, like, I
literally, I still owe them my entire life. They made sure that I got the medications that I needed because biologics are extremely difficult to get, like, and be approved of because they're so expensive, and I was on even a double dose, and, like, just the amount of, like, support I received from them, especially my doctor in Glasgow, he even knew my mom. Like, he talked to my mom on the phone a few times, and then my mom came and stayed with me, and, like, my mom would come with me to my appointments, and, like, there was a point in time where none of the medications were working, and, like, he was already, like, in contact with, like, the head rheumatology of, like, all of the UK and London, England, and there was a chance that I was actually going to have to be, like, flown out there, and my brother was going to come and give me stem cells. So that doctor was just, like, he just, like, I can't even put into words, like, how much he did for me, and, like, he had, like, I had his own personal number, and then even when I came back, like, after I finished my master's, because with all the support I was able to receive from the doctors and also the UK school, I was able to finish my master's, and the original doctor that diagnosed the macrophage had kind of retired and, like, didn't transfer my case properly, and so I started with a new doctor downtown Toronto, and he was unfortunately just not at all what I needed. He didn't give me the proper support I needed. He wasn't able to he just kind of watched me suffer and didn't really take enough action on anything, and anytime I sought his help, it did not help. Like, he just, like, did not actually, it was very clear he did not care, and that he just, like, didn't really have the idea of what to do and didn't really want to take it on as, like, a huge project, because he himself was also extremely, like, advanced in his career, but, like, unlike the other one that was well experienced, he was probably well experienced, but, like, you could tell he was just kind of checked out. And then after 4 or 6 months of, like, almost basically suffering and just, like, slowly deteriorating, I decided I had to change to, like, a Newmarket clinic because I just, like, was going to, like, I just knew I was not, like, my future was not going to work out. So then I switched to a Newmarket clinic, and then the doctor I had was, like, he was very candid. He's like, you are my first patient that has still. He was very young. He was only, I think, 31, 32. And he was like, I did my residency in Saskatchewan, and he's like, we did have a lot of patients there that with the disease. He's like, but we will take you into your clinic, and like, our clinic, I will talk to the senior doctors here. They will consult, like, on every decision I make. But he was, like, immediately outright, he's like, take my cell phone number. You are the most sick patient I have. Like, anything, he's like, if I find that you go to the hospital without telling me, I will be upset. He's like, if you ever have any questions, he's like, text me directly. Anytime I had a question about, like, a little, like, something that would come up, like a rash, something about medication, I could text me. He'd answer me within a day, no matter what. And he was just wonderful. So, like, a lot of the times there were several doctors that, like, genuinely saved my life, and I would not be here without them.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that sounds like that you did receive, like, a lot of support, and, you know, that there was, like, an impact on your life that doctors had in helping you. So
Absolutely.
yeah, no, that's really good to hear.
And that is all for today's For the Record episode. For BCIT News, this is Bahar Garian.